Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's event. We are having a question and answer forum to discuss the survey that came out on Friday from the district office regarding the possibility of our students coming back this spring. I know we're all excited to have our students back in school, and but we always have to consider what factors are in play when that is happening. So I invited this evening our panelists, Mr. Adam Gelb, he's our assistant principal, and Eliza Zenelman, she's one of our faculty members, Miss Gina Wang, she's also one of our faculty members, and Miss Anne Rhee, who is a parent representative for our school. And all of these people served either on the main committee for this spring semester panel, or they served in the teacher committee or the parent committee. So hopefully all together we can have some answers to the questions that were pre-submitted regarding the survey, because I know there's lots of questions out there. We got a lot of questions, over 30, so that's pretty exciting. First, I'd like to welcome Mr. Gelb. He has a nice message for us. Thank you, Mr. Gelb.
Thank you. I won't take long before we turn it over to Gina and Eliza and Anne. We all serve on various committees that have met 3 or 4 times within the last 2 or 3 weeks. If some of you tune into the board meetings, the board wanted what a reopening plan could look like, what things to consider. And in that plan, they wanted to gather some feedback about how our parents and students are feeling about a possible return to school. And that is pretty much the primary reason for the survey being sent out. And as I looked at the questions already, there are some questions about the wording of the actual survey, so we can get to that as well. There's a lot of stuff about instructional models, and we can discuss that. And so we do want to hear from you about how you feel or what questions you might have as we explore this possibility. It's not necessarily a plan to return on a certain date. So I want to clarify that. It's like, we're not discussing January 8th. How do you feel about your student coming back? It's if and when we come back in the spring, what things should we consider? How are parents and guardians feeling? What other things should we think about? What other things should these committees discuss as we iron out some of these details on these committees? And I think we're going to meet more frequently starting now. We meet about once, sometimes twice a week, but each site will be gathering input. The district would like, I saw a couple questions about alignment. The district would like to be as aligned as possible because we do have students that take courses at various sites. We have teachers that teach courses at various sites. So how can we be as aligned as our other schools in the district, but then also have some flexibility for some programs that we only have at San Mateo? We have a choir class at night, we have some band, we have biotech. And so how do we incorporate all those things to best serve our students? And then most importantly is, how do parents feel and how do they rank how they feel in terms of keeping a student home or sending a student to school, and what kind of impact do those decisions have should you decide to do one or the other. The survey isn't binding. So as you know, data is changing as we speak in California and in our county. And so just because you mention something now on November 16th or 17th doesn't mean that your academic counselor is going to hold you to that and sign you up for something because you clicked it back in November. And so we will continue to gather input through the months of November, December, probably even January, to best inform some of these models. And so I just wanted to kind of set kind of lay of the land for our time together in the next hour. Gina and Eliza know a lot more than me about the AB and all those models and how to explain them, especially if you've never looked at a bell schedule before, and how that might impact your student and how your student best learns, whether it's asynchronous, synchronous, a blend, whatever it might be. they'll be able to get to those specifics. So thank you for attending, and I'll turn it back over to Sandy, our host. And I think we're going to jump into some categories of questions and discuss as a group. So thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, Adam. Yes, I think that our situation is very fluid considering today we moved from orange to red, which was not a surprise considering the levels of coronavirus that's occurring right now. I also wanted to mention, unfortunately, we were not able to provide interpretation services for tonight's event. And we're very sorry about that, but pulling something together really quickly, unfortunately, we can't always locate an interpreter. With that said, also, if you have any questions as we go through this process that you haven't submitted, there is a link in the chat. It's in the chat on the Zoom as well as the chat in the YouTube. And you can go in on that link and input your questions, and I will try to get to as many questions as we can throughout the evening. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Okay, so next, Ms. Zendelman and Ms. Swang are going to speak to us about the various schedules. Thank you.
Thank you. So there seem to be a lot of questions about the schedules, and so I took the presentation from the board and I just kind of annotated parts of it and kind of highlighted parts. So I will put it in the chat, and then I will also present it. Let me just get this copied into the chat. So here it is. There's the presentation, and I'm going to share my screen. So this might look familiar, and I feel like I've looked at these schedules so many times, but I know not everyone else has, and nor should they've had to. And I'll also put captioning on. So there's three models. There's model, and Gina, feel free to hop in if I need to hop in on anything. There's the model AB, there's model AB plus, and there's model AB streaming. There were a few other models we looked at, but these seem to be the ones that were kind of narrowed down, and they're all very different. So the first one is model AB, which is 2 cohorts with asynchronous days. So this is mostly what they showed you at the board meeting, but I kind of like annotated it with red and blue. So what this would look like is that on a Monday, basically your child would be at home, and there'd be some type of flex support office hours. So there'd be one day a week, either a Monday or Wednesday, maybe Friday, where basically there wouldn't be regular classes. There'd be some type of like flex or support. Some school districts have done it where, you know, from 8 to 9, all the history teachers are available for office hours. From 9 to 10, all of the English teachers. Some districts have done it where there's an advisory model. We've looked at lots of different districts, and this is kind of one thing that seems to be in common. So this would be the day that teachers would be calling to students, would be maybe tracking down parents and calling them and saying this child needs to do this assignment. So kids wouldn't be in school. They would have some type of assignment they would do at home. There would be some type of kind of flex support, maybe on campus, maybe not. It's kind of open flex. And when we talk about these A and B, basically what that means is that half of in-person students. So if you're a student, you would be going to school 2 days a week, and we'd probably stick with our block schedule. So if you took biology with me, you would probably only see me once a week. So you'd see me once a week, you'd have an asynchronous assignment for me for the rest of the week, and that would be it. So you'd only see each teacher for like one 75, 80, 90-minute period a week in person, and the rest of that would be at home with no guidance. Like you'd kind of just get a list of assignments on Canvas to do, and you'd be expected to do them at home, and then you could come in for flex support office hours on Monday. Okay, so this model would require a change of master schedule and student schedules. So basically, because we know that we're not in a place where 98% of students are going to want to come back, There would be some students who would still be doing remote and distance learning, most likely. Probably like 50 to 75%. It seems like, I don't know, well, this is what the survey, we're going to help us inform. And then, so like I, as a biology teacher, could teach 2 classes remote where I'm still doing my regular remote schedule. And then I might have 1 in-person class. I might have 1 class that has this asynchronous AB model, you know, or, you know, let's say there's a biology teacher in my department who can't come to campus. They would be doing all the remote classes, and then I would get all of their in-person students. It could also happen, I teach AP biology. They might send, like, there might be some kids, I might have enough kids to be in person, and some of my AP biology kids might have to take a remote class with a teacher at another school. So if we did this model, there's logistically no way that every kid's scheduled would stay the same, and every kid's teachers would stay the same. So there would be a change of what we call a master schedule, which I know as teachers we understand what that means, but as parents and students you might not. And that's basically like who teaches what, when they teach it, and what classes they teach. So there would be changes. Some teachers would be teaching completely new assignments. Some students would have completely new schedules. Some students would have completely new teachers. Some students might have teachers from other schools. So, which might become problematic because of obvious reasons. What geometry is at San Mateo might be different than what geometry is at Aragon because of how they sequence it and what they choose to teach. Okay. The other model is model AB+, which in yellow is basically the same exact thing as this model, except on this Monday, they have virtual synchronous instruction. So if you're a student in my biology class, you would see me virtually on Monday for 30 minutes, probably. And then you would see me in person once a week, and then the rest of the things. So it's just almost exactly the same. You take out that flex and support. It could be added maybe like on Wednesdays, a little bit, maybe like a little bit of flex support time, but basically you take out that whole day of flex and support day, and that Monday is just all virtual. So it's almost exactly the same, and it would have the same exact, you can see right over here, it would require a change of the master schedule. So it basically increases instructional minutes a little bit more than the model AB. That's why it's called modeled AB plus, because it's a little bit more, but it still, you would expect changes to the master schedule. So your child, or if you're a kid here, you might not have the same teachers or classes. You'd have the same classes, but they might not be with the same students. They might be at different times. It might be at a different school with a different school teachers, different teacher from another school, depending on how everything crazy works, you know. So
to be clear, your students would, on either of those models, on any of these models actually, your student would be attending school in person 2 days a week.
yes.
Right.
And
And then you would only have, right. And then that means it's not 2 interactions with each teacher. Most likely it'll be 1 interaction with each teacher because it'll be on block. So on even day, on one day, it'll be all your odd periods. On another day, it'll be all the even periods.
Okay, so then there's model AB streaming. Okay, and so this is basically Monday could be the AB asynchronous, it could be virtual synchronous. That 1 extra day of the week is really kind of up for, that's like a further decision idea. Basically what this means is that I am teaching in my classroom on Zoom, and there just happens to be 6, 12, 15, 17 students who are also teaching, who are also on Zoom on their computers at the same time, learning. And then there's also a group of students at home who are on Zoom. So, you know, some teachers might be able to, like, you know, the upshot is that I could see, if I see Gina is not doing her work, I could say, Gina, turn your screen around. I can see you're not doing your work, you know, or Gina, come and sit 6 feet away from me and explain to me why you're confused, and I can help you with this, you know, with this lab or whatever. But they're still on the computer and they're still basically on Zoom. They just happen to have the teacher in front of them. So it gives them that, like, connection, I don't know. And they are just in class those days. Now, it's
with other
essentially
peers.
what? With
And
their
with
peers.
other peers, yeah.
And we did talk about how if we did this as best practice, there could be some, like we could do something at the end of class where it's like the last 20 minutes, all the kids at home are dismissed to do an asynchronous like homework. And then we touch base with like the 17 or 15 or 12 kids in our class and give them some type of a unique in-person assignment. So there's a little wiggle room, but ultimately it would be the same in school and at home experience on Zoom. Just the difference is that you have that person-to-person connection. With this model, the reason why I think some of us are more comfortable is that it has the least amount of schedule change. I wouldn't have to change any of my classes, or like students would basically be able to stay in their same classes. Teachers would be able to stay teaching their same classes. There wouldn't be remote teachers. There wouldn't be hybrid teachers. Teachers would just be teaching this. It also allows flexibility to move from virtual to in-person. I should have put a red over there, but I didn't.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. So like if I'm a student and I find out that I've been exposed to COVID, I can quarantine for 2 weeks, Or if I'm a student and my mom was really worried and didn't want me to sign up for in-person, but then as hearing, our San Mateo numbers are down and like we have this like robust testing happening in San Mateo that wasn't happening in November, then I don't know, I'm just like imagining the future. Hope. And so like then you could go into in-person. You could be like, oh, I want to go to in-person. And then there could be students who could be like, some weeks they want to go in and see their buddies. And some weeks they're just like, I'm lazy. I want to still not brush my teeth and wear my sweatpants and stay at home. So it allows for that flexibility and ability to flow in and out without students like missing school because of quarantine. Because we all know that when we do go back to school, there's going to be a new normal in terms of how we interact in the world, in terms of like when we go into work sick and when we don't. So that's kind of the A/B streaming model.
So part of the A/B streaming that we're hearing teachers' concerns is that I think a lot of teachers are thinking they have to do two separate things. We don't really see that happening with the numbers being not perfectly balanced. It'll probably be everybody's doing what we're doing right now, just kind of continuing off of that model with half the students in your classroom.
So I'm going to read the questions. So the first question was a question for teachers, which was, in the asynchronous model where instruction time is decreased 40 to 60%, will you be able to cover all of your curriculum? If so, how is this possible? If not, what are the implications? I think the really easy answer is no, we will not be able to cover all of the curriculum. I know for AP Bio, if I do try to, the kids will have an immense amount of work at home on their own to do, which maybe they'd want to do, but I don't think I would be able to hold them all to that. And so basically the implications are that students would have to be a lot more, for students who are in AP classes and classes that have some type of test at the end, they'd have to be a lot more self-structured and self-motivated to get through all that material on their own, or students just aren't going to get through the same amount of material. There's no way. So my regular biology curriculum, we would just maybe learn evolution and that's it.
So that would be AB and AB plus. Has 2 to 3 days of asynchronous learning. Yeah, so that on the AB streaming model, depends on how we execute it. It's probably going to be the same model as now, with maybe to maximize the in-person time if we cut back 15 minutes per block period for the students who are working at home. So it would work out to maybe 30 minutes less of synchronous learning.
And I think most teachers would say that this year they are cutting curriculum as is, but I think it's just about how much. And I think there would be a lot more. I know there would be if we moved to an asynchronous model. Yeah. From my AP Biology Facebook group, where we all talk about all these different things, I know that teachers who are have any asynchronousness in their school models are cutting the kids are like, I'm probably 3 or 4 weeks behind right now. They're 2 months behind or 3 months behind, and we're only like 3 months into school. So the asynchronous model, your kid will be learning less, but maybe more because maybe they get the benefit of in person. I don't know.
I think some classes it might be for sure maybe worth it, like the social interaction for the learning loss. But I think in other classes, I teach math, so in math, we can't just call this year a wash because next year is the next math course that's consecutive. Or in AP classes, you have the AP test at the end of the year. So I think it really does depend on which class, but I mean, not ideally, I'm pretty sure all teachers would be pretty saddened at the amount of learning loss.
The next question was, is there a chance my daughter's schedule will completely change next semester? So the answer is, if you do any model that has an asynchronous component, there most likely will be a change in your child's schedule. May not be, but I would err on the side of there will be some type of change. So that's the AB plus model and the AB. And I'll put my email in the chat too. I know Mr. Gelb did, and you guys can always contact me too. Gina, you want to add anything?
I'll add your email.
Okay. If my child decides to stay with 100% distance learning, will she still receive the same educational minutes at the other students who opt to go in? So I think what it seems
on
like
the AB, yeah, I think on the AB and AB plus, yeah, it'll be different. It'll be different if you choose.
If they're full online.
I think so. Well, I guess it would depend on the teacher.
But their schedule would change to have like a remote teacher. So there's been 2 talks. So there's been 2 discussions, which one has, 2 lines of thinking. One is that if a child doesn't do full in person, if they don't do the in-person option, that they're going to automatically just opt them into independent study, which I think we know parents would be very upset about. And parents should be upset about. So if that's something you don't want your kid to come to school, but you also don't want them to be an independent study, you should let the board know that. Because I feel like independent study isn't the same as our like synchronous remote learning we're doing right now. I think it seems like if we don't do the AB streaming, that there'd probably be a remote option that would be similar to what it is right now. So there wouldn't be much change. So basically, there'd be some students doing hybrid. It'd be different for teachers, yeah. So there'd be some students doing hybrid, and then there's be some students doing the full remote. There's just going to be schedule changes because they're going to try to like work it so the teachers who are immunocompromised are doing the full remote, so that might involve more schedule changes. And please, if there's a clarifying question, especially from one of the like other co-hosts, let me know, because if it's unclear to you, it's definitely unclear to other people. Okay, Gina, this one's for you. I don't understand all the models. Will we be able to choose the model we want for our students?
So I don't think so. In terms of whether you want your student to be coming onto campus or asynchronous, you will have that choice no matter what model we go with. But I believe the district is deciding on one model for the whole district to follow. And then, and then from there within that model.
Yeah, within that model that's chosen by the district, as a parent or guardian, you would decide whether on-campus learning is something that would benefit your child, or do you want to participate in the same model but from a distance? So the model would be the same for everyone.
Mm-hmm. So there would not be like an AB, some students on AB plus and some students on AB streaming. It'd be the districts would choose one model. If the only instruction is in person, what happens if a student has to quarantine? won't they fall behind? And this does not seem fair.
At this
It's
point,
AB or AB plus.
yeah, at this
AB
point,
streaming is easy. AB streaming, they just stay home and do the same thing from home.
The other ones, they would fall behind. It would be like they're sick for 2 weeks and the teachers would send them stuff via Canvas. Right, Adam?
yeah, I talked to the district before this meeting, but I don't think we're going to return to having the only option to be in person. There will be some distance learning available.
You wouldn't be able to flow in and out of it if you were quarantined for 2 weeks. You would
Correct.
just miss that 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So if it's not clear already between Eliza and I, we only see AB streaming as the most viable model.
Perfect solution. But
It's the only viable model that we see, but there's
that's
4 other
our
models on the table, so.
reviewing the survey, the opportunities of coming back are centered around Zoom. Does this mean that classes will remain synchronous and the opportunities that my students will have the ability to walk into the classroom and sit at a desk surrounded by a limited number of masked peers while attending classes similar to what they receive now? And even in the AB, so the AB models, the AB and the AB plus would allow for teachers to like create instruction that might not be around Zoom, but for a lot of teachers, that might be what they're comfortable with. So some teachers might be more comfortable with distributing materials and giving manipulatives to kids and handing out papers. And some teachers are just like, if I have to teach in person, I am standing behind plexiglass, I am not circulating, and I am doing everything on the computer. And it's going to be very similar because I don't want to have to walk around and like give papers to kids. And so I think the AB plus, you might have some teachers that are doing that, but there's no way that the district's going to command that. And also in any in-person learning, collaboration among students will be very, very limited because we don't want kids screaming. We want them staying 6 feet apart. We don't want any like type of loud talking that would aerosolize the virus. So in-person teaching would not follow the best practices that we normally do in a pre-COVID world. So it wouldn't involve group work and collaboration in the same way. And then this is a question for us, Gina. It looks to me that all the proposed plans are academically inferior to the 100% distance learning model. Do you agree or disagree? Why? Thank you for your time. You can go first.
Oh, we agree. We agree, and yet we understand the need for students to see other people in a safe way, for sure. Like we definitely have that in mind, and it's something that breaks our hearts, and we ourselves want to see them. I don't think any of these, I mean, you asked this personally, so I don't think any of these models are really viable. I think the only ones we are working on kind of looking at our remote learning model and trying to improve that model, and then maybe taking that Wednesday to maybe in the future when we're ready to bring back pods for certain community building and the actual, not to learn content, but for the real reasons that students need to be back on campus. So we are considering other options while the district is trying to figure this stuff out. So that's kind of, in terms of learning though, I do think distance learning is the only way to go.
Yeah, I think like a little different. Like I think, so like I think that the whole approach that we're going about this I think there are some kids who are going to be the same in distance learning and in-person learning. I think we need to instead focus on augmenting our current quarantine pod situation. So currently we have like maybe 14 kids on campus at a time doing online learning. And I think, and I know Ms. Shu has had trouble finding people to staff those, getting kids on campus. So I think we need to augment the way opportunities for kids to come on campus. I know I personally go to school almost every day, and I get a lot of value from that, from seeing my colleagues, even though I'm masked and at a distance, and from leaving my house, and like getting off my couch. So I understand why parents and why students want to come to school, but I just don't know if instructionally things are going to change that much if kids come into campus. So I think instead of like pushing all this money into like ventilating every single room on campus, we should instead work on spending the money like to try to bring in groups of students who really want to be on campus. Kind of like right now, I think we have like 10% of our teachers coming to campus to work, maybe less. So getting those people who want to come onto campus, giving them the opportunity to come onto campus, I think is important and could be beneficial. And like also triaging, like finding our students who are doing the worst, like all of our students with F's and D's, and really encouraging them to come onto campus to get more support and funding that support and getting more classified staff. That's my opinion though. And like testing those people more and coming up with a more like, you know, streamlined plan across all the schools. So I think it seems like we're going, to me, for like, there's the diminishing returns with some students in terms of what they'd actually gain to be on campus. And then there's some kids who, if they come on campus or they don't come on campus, the downstream effects are going to be greater. So really focusing on like, you know, if you ask me about elementary school, I think elementary school kids need to come onto campus because it's so socially important for them. Now, for our students, I think it depends on the kid. I think it depends if they're an English language learner. I think it depends if they have a stable home life. I think it depends if they have any socio-emotional issues. They have mental health issues. So I think it's just like, I think the plan shouldn't be a one plan for everyone, but just different plans for different groups of students. And that's, I think, the more equitable and also probably the more instructionally viable, like the thing that's going to actually make the most difference in terms of that plan. Those are my 2 cents. Do you just want, I think next we have safety in pods. So it's Adam's turn, Mr. Gelb's turn.
Yep, I went through the questions and I'll try to tackle 5 or 6 of them in kind of the same response. We have considered some outside classes. I saw a question about outside classes. Our pods did start off outside. It's gotten a little bit colder. So having students on a laptop outside at 9 in the morning or even in the middle of the day does get a little uncomfortable. And yes, it is safer. And since we went down to purple, we shifted some of the pods inside. We have some spaces that are a little bit more spaced out, like the multi-purpose room. We've had a pod of 8 to 10 students in there. We can fit up to like 18, I think. It gets trickier when, and the NPR is nice because you can walk in from outside. We haven't had students in any hallways, right, where they have to pass one another, things like that. When we can control the in and out egress and things like that, and control a bathroom, it's a lot easier to monitor those things because the district and the county want us and need us to monitor those things for safety. So outside classes is great when the weather is great. Wi-Fi is better in some outside spaces. The district did implement some different Wi-Fi spots. Some are better than others. I saw a question about some extracurricular classes other than athletics being offered. And so we're exploring things like a dance class. Like if there's a dance class that wants to take place with some of the dance students, the county says you can have 7 inside or 14 outside. So we're trying to figure that out with the dance teacher to see when we can explore a dance pod and have students learn outside. The trouble is if this is during the instructional day, then the teacher would be teaching to 14 dance students in person, and there'd probably be 20 more trying to learn the choreography and things like that from home. And so that's just one of the challenges we're trying to work through with these outside classes or on-campus pods. I'm going to try and segue into testing. There were like 3 questions, I think, there on testing. There is testing available. We have right now 100 kits. I think it's the oral swab, and they're in the health office. And I'm told that it takes about 48 to 72 hours to turn around. And so with our next pod that we have inside starting the week of Thanksgiving, I think we have our next learning pod. We are going to try to get those students tested this week or next week to have the results so we can know who's on our campus. It is optional. It's optional testing. And so there have been times when the Stanford Health Van comes to our campus and families don't want to have their student tested for whatever reason. And that makes things a little trickier to know who's on our campus and who's in our pods. And so there was a question about the risk and why we're making a push for on-campus learning, or why there's an urge to do this when there's a vaccine coming. I don't think, I think it's to have a plan for whenever it is safe to return. I don't think there's a timestamp on this. And so there is going to be testing available for students and staff. The tricky thing with that is mathematically, the more people you test, the more positives you're going to get. So how does that in turn impact anyone being on campus? And so pods is kind of easy. It's easier to shut down a pod because you know exactly who to contact trace when it's only 7 or 8 or 10 people at most. If you were to have students in Ms. Wong's class and Ms. Zenelsman's class and in my office and a dance class, and someone were to test positive and you don't know exactly who that student ate lunch with or was with during the break and things like that, then it's kind of a snowball effect. And how many people do you ask to self-quarantine for the safety of everybody else coming on campus the following day or the following period? Like if we were to get results on a Monday and a student tests positive and that student is actually physically in a class learning, the county and district are going to come up with certain protocol, and it's in the district, the flow charts in the district presentation on what the protocol is for anybody who was in contact with that student or teacher.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
So I read the county guidelines today. So this is something that's going to come from a public health official at the county. So the county guidelines right now are to close anyone who's in your cohort. So that would be anyone who you've been in close contact with, which our county defines as even if they're masked, being in the same room for more than 15 minutes. Santa Clara County, on the other hand, doesn't have the same definition, and they count close contacts as different things. So right now, under the current county plans, if one kid gets sick, it could be a potentially 105 students. And if you count around 15 kids in 7 different classes, like there'd probably be overlap, but if you're just assuming 15 unique kids in 7 different classes and 7 teachers, it would be 15 teachers and 105 students and 7 teachers would have to quarantine under the current county guidelines. So that's where our county is right now. I know Santa Clara is different. I haven't looked at other places, but that's kind of what it would look like.
Thank you, Eliza. And going back to, the testing and the risk, there was a question about a choice. Will we have a choice whether we want to send the students to school or not? Yes, you will. We can't mandate in the current climate that you have to send your student to school. So please know that when you fill this out, it's not binding. I said that in the introduction, but just in case you jumped on this call late, collecting information in November, December, even January about how families feel about students being on campus or not being on campus. We will collect that information in the upcoming months. I think there was a question on buses. The transportation will bus. It will just take more buses and longer time because there's fewer students allowed on the bus. I think the question was about buses from Foster City. And I did get a kick out of, I don't know if this was a student or a parent or guardian, but they asked about Yonder and cell phones, which I got a kick out of. I don't know. Cell phones really aren't our priority right now, although I appreciate the question. I know teachers loved it last year for 7 months with all the uninterruptions. It was a logistical nightmare for our office trying to track all of it, but cell phones on campus isn't our priority. With so few students, I would hope, the hope would be that they would come back onto campus to be aware of the social distance, but still want to socialize with their peers rather than spending their downtime on their phones, which they've been able to do for 24 hours a day the last 8 months. So the committees, again, I'll repeat it, the committees will continue to meet at the district level. I'm on the admin panel. Gina and Eliza are on the teacher panel. And so the goal of the district is to evaluate these reopening plans. Like Eliza and Gina said, should we go to a model where their people are on campus? Having flexibility within that model, should everyone need to go back home and learn from home, is something that I think they're going to prioritize. So there's as little interruption to teacher schedules, changes on student schedules. And so there's little instructional time that's lost should we need to go back and forth within the spring semester. I don't know if I'm turning it back over to Sandy or if there's another group of questions that we can kind of clump together.
So I think going back to the safety pods and school access, I just wanted to follow up on a couple of those questions. One is one of the statements that we have to rate in the survey says, opportunities for my student to work, collaborate in small groups on campus with other students in person. So they're supposed to rate that. And the question is this possible to work in small groups in person and maintain 6 feet of distance? So
Sorry, Eliza, are you wanting to answer that question or?
I don't think so. I don't know. I can think of my class. I teach data science where a lot of things have to be done on the computer anyways. I can't even imagine it being worth it to look at the same screen and work in pods when we have Zoom available. Even if they were in my classroom, it would be much more clear. They would be closer to the doc if they were on their own screen anyways.
rather than
So in terms of,
Yeah.
rather than in person, 6 feet apart, trying to look at us, I don't know. I personally in a math class, I don't see that happening. Eliza teaches science, so maybe labs.
I think in a lab, I think there's like an increased, we talked about this at our subcommittee meeting, there'd just be an increased cost of materials because I would have each kid have their own. Usually I have like my kids work in groups of 4, sometimes 6 when it comes to like lab equipment and stuff. And the kids I would just give each kid their own set of equipment if I was doing a lab. So I don't really know how collaboration would look. I feel like I could improve Zoom collaboration because I'd be there to make sure they were working together and I could see if someone wasn't on the Zoom at all and like was doing something else. But I don't know how it would look like. And I've tried to imagine it. Like I'd imagine, I don't know. I don't think it would be, but I think there's a lot of parents who think it's going to magically happen, which is why that question is there. And that's what they just really want their kids on campus because they think this is all going to happen and that it's okay if instruction is lost because that, 2 minutes the kids have talking to each other from 6 feet apart is going to be very valuable. So.
And if it was certain classes that I was teaching, I'd agree. But other classes, I would
English,
very much
they'd be able
disagree.
to have some more discussions, I guess, They could have like little Socratic discussions. I don't know.
that's good insight as to why the question was there when it doesn't seem like it's that possible.
Yeah, I think it depends on the class and what your goal of having the students there is, right? And so if let's a language class, French, Spanish, Chinese, when Miss Steinbrecher or Miss Sablish or Miss Barba is teaching and you're trying to learn a language and you can see their lips move and they're clear and you can hear, it's different than me wearing a mask, being in a classroom with 7 or 8 people with the teacher wearing a mask also. But then again, if what you're looking for is just for your student to be engaged in Zoom at the same time they're supposed to be engaged, then maybe what you're looking for is attainable by having a student in the classroom. So I think it depends on class to class, student to student, and then teacher, depending on your content area too. So great question. And, obviously we won't know until we attempt something like that.
So the next question is, what happens if my child's teacher cannot teach in person for whatever reason? If the student is on campus that day, where do they go during that class period?
That's a great question. I know that the teachers union is going to try and figure out what happens if we go to a model and there's a teacher that has 3 young kids at home and their district isn't returning to school, and they are responsible for teaching their own kids or making sure their 5-year-old, 7-year-old, and 9-year-old are on their Zoom. How do we get that person to come back? So that's kind of with the union and agreement with human resources, and that those are conversations that have already started. I've heard some things about having another adult in the room available, and then if the student is fortunate enough to have maybe 4 out of their 6 teachers on campus that day, they would learn in person maybe from 4 of those teachers, and then 2 of the people would have adults but not their teacher of record, and they would obviously do Zoom exactly like they would do from home, but maybe be in a classroom with 8 or 9 other students, and then transition to their next classroom when the bell rings, but the teacher would maybe be elsewhere, most likely at home if for some reason they weren't able to be on campus.
Other districts are doing, they call them security proctors. And basically, if a teacher has like it's like, 65 and has diabetes and high blood pressure, the teacher's at home and on Zoom, it's on the projector and on the kids' computers. And then there's like an instructional aide or someone who's in the class making sure the kids are masking and turning on their computer and taking attendance. So that's what some districts are doing. We haven't really gotten that far in our conversations.
Okay, our next question is, where will we eat lunch? Do we get to eat lunch with our friends, or will we have to eat lunch in an assigned classroom? I think this is from a student.
Yeah, so
Mr.
that's another tricky one, is that all eating is supposed to take place outside. And when the weather's great, our campus is the best campus to eat outside. And so there's plenty of room and we would have our campus security administrators, adults, trying to remind students to be socially distanced while they eat because their masks are off. The thing we've been struggling with is if it's rainy, windy, and freezing outside, we have a lot of hallway space. So how do we allow students to possibly eat inside with using maybe the main gym as an option, or the small gym, or the cafeteria? We would probably get directives from the district on whether or not that's okay. If the weather was that bad and we couldn't be outside for any of the breaks or anything like that, again, the flexibility of, hey, because of the weather, I mean, we've had school canceled for electricity, for smoke, for things like that. So being flexible to communicate with parents and guardians, saying, sending out a dialer at 4:30, tomorrow's going to be 100% virtual. No one would lose out on any instructional time, and we wouldn't be scrambling to come up with a plan, because hopefully the plan is flexible for learning at home, just like we've done for the last 3-4 months.
Okay, I'm going to move on to questions that have recently been submitted on our chat. One of these questions is, what is your plan to expand and improve online learning programs and experiences for next semester? So I think this is considering we might continue in completely synchronous learning and at-home learning. Is there a plan to improve that program?
Yeah, Gina or Aliza, I don't know if you want to talk about a little bit about the PD or the PD sessions that are offered both by the district and the site in terms of ongoing learning that's going on with staff.
I guess the question, I have an idea of what needs to be improved, but I'm not sure if the person asking the question is asking about how current instruction from teachers is going to improve online, or on a bigger scale, how are we going to get more students to engage? So I don't know if that person can clarify that question maybe in the chat, if that makes sense. Like,
I don't even know if we are allowing them to use the chat.
oh, are
Yeah,
we not?
they can go on to chat and
We
send
can
in.
answer both.
Yeah.
I think I don't know, I think this whole push towards in-person learning has kind of been as an educator, has kind of been a little seemed rash, because it seems like, I think we definitely need to be having these conversations, but I think there's definitely been a lack of conversations on how we can improve online learning for everyone. Because I definitely think, like, when I look at my amount of students with D's and F's, there's definitely a group of students who aren't being served. and who we're not actually, as a district, investing in and working on finding ways to serve. And I don't think this comes from Ms. Shu or Mr. Gelb. I think it has to come from the district and from money and from changes in policy. And so I think the board wants to say we're going back because that's like what everyone does, and there's, groups of parents who want to go back. But I think at the same time, if we really need to be looking at how can we continue to improve online learning. And I think that this discussion about return kind of moves us away from that, and diverts from that, which is the super important conversation we have. If it's about teachers and parents not liking how they're doing instruction, I think we're all working and we're learning and we're getting professional development and we're meeting and trying to fix that and get better. But it's like we're learning a whole new set of like online learning is a completely new job. It's like you have to develop a whole new set of tools, a whole toolkit and a whole new set of skills. And I think teachers are just, working and developing. It's like we're all first year teachers again, which is unfortunate, but
I think a good follow-up question that we just got to that was, what is being done in the current environment to help students who are behind and struggling? Which of these models get those students extra support so they can succeed in high school and beyond?
So so at Site Leadership today, we did bring up ways to kind of change the structure of what we're doing for the full distance learning. It is not ready to be shared here quite yet, but we are working on such models and hopefully getting the district to approve these models. Teachers will see it on Thursday to hopefully get some more feedback on it, because we do agree that the students falling behind it's problematic. So we are working on that model, trying to trust and let the district do their thing and figure their thing out at the same time. Because as Eliza said, we don't want that to distract from what we currently have and what is likely to continue in January. So TBD.
I think like the more pressure and conversation that can be had around that, I think that's that's valuable and like needs to be said, so thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, and then we are going to, once we get some more eyes on it, we will be sending it, Sandy, to you and Anne, so that you can take a look at it and tell us what you think as well. And you can get other people on board or send it to whoever afterwards. But it is in the works. We are working on it. And hopefully that model can also lend itself to bringing students back in smaller pods, not half a school at a time, and be able to prioritize our at-risk students.
So next question is, could you confirm that if we went with the AB streaming model, but did not want our student to attend any classes in person, then the option exists that the AB streaming entirely remotely is available?
Yes.
Confirm that 100% synchronous distance learning is available.
Yes, I can confirm that.
Thank you.
With the same teachers and the same schedule, unless we like move Wednesday to Monday, but like there would be no
interruption to schedule.
You would have your same geometry teacher, your same English teacher, your same dance teacher.
Okay. It is the most flexible.
It is.
Of the models.
It definitely is.
Possibly the only viable model. And also, again, if there's a quarantine scare, like if students, might have had contact with somebody, you can easily quarantine.
Yes. Okay, when you refer to other districts doing one thing or another, have those districts already implemented? And if so, I hope the other districts have shared their experiences. I assume, however, that there are very few districts that have already started anything other than distance learning.
Yeah. Eliza, if you want to jump in, I know we discussed this at our admin committee meeting about Napa being back. I think they're on an AB, they kind of rotate on an AB schedule. And I know since they've opened, a lot more parents are opting to keep their students home as test results come out, as students maybe try it out and it's not everything they thought it would be, or maybe not worth the risk, or for whatever reason. So I'm very interested in actually seeing it in person and seeing what it looks like. What does school like that actually look like? What's how are teachers dealing with? Talk to some folks, because I think they're still doing it, but they're seeing a decrease in attendance for some students that initially wanted to be on campus and have since decided that distance learning is a better option. So we do talk to neighboring districts all the time. We look at or instructional models from neighboring districts from all over the state. And so those are discussed in our committee meetings, at least on the administrator one, and I think on the teacher one as well.
Yeah, in our teacher meeting, we looked at a few different models from schedules that had been implemented across the state. Napa was probably the closest demographically towards us, and probably has the most similar parent population in terms of politics and stuff, because the other districts that were open were ones in Orange County and Placerville. But we did look at those, and we only had a week to come together with all this stuff, or 10 days. So something we asked as a subcommittee from teachers was to give us time to reach out and communicate with these districts, and maybe districts. And I talked to teachers, I have contacts in New York. And so just talking to districts in places where people have gone back. And that's something which hopefully we will continue if the district allows us to and gives us time to continue having those conversations. Because that's something that came up repeatedly. It was like, we want to actually talk to teachers and students from those districts and see how it's gone and see what the pluses and minuses are. And we haven't had ample opportunity or time to do that. Napa is the one our Assistant Superintendent Julia Kempke's from. It was Napa prior to San Mateo, so that's where we've had the most communication. But we are hoping to get more time to reach out and communicate and get data from these districts.
Yeah, so I was just messaged that in New Jersey, where the students were offered the chance to come in for hybrid, the number of kids coming in started at 12 to 15 the first week and quickly dropped to 3 to 4. There was too much quarantine required for exposure, and the learning model did not seem to work for most of those students. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and just a little bit about our pods. We've tried pods as a district almost on every campus, and like I said, the more you test, the more positives you're going to get. We've shut down pods. Hillsdale shut down multiple pods. Cappuccino's had one, and so it's really disheartening when you have the staff willing to make it happen, and we have to kind of pause and move a step back when we have a little bit of momentum to support these students. And the way we selected our pods was we did some outreach for students with, multiple grades that weren't passing, or engagement issues, or attendance issues. And how do we get them engaged? Is to connect them to a staff member who can really guide them. And sometimes we can offer that, and sometimes we can't, because we don't have the staff to pull a classroom teacher to guide a group of 8 to 10 students that are multiple grades or have various classes, because they're busy teaching their own classes. So sometimes it's been a classified staff member, and they've stepped up big time with helping us out. But it's been pretty much just a space with great internet access, with someone looking over you to make sure you're kind of logged on and being socially distanced during the breaks. But it's nowhere near the support they would get from a classroom teacher that has the expertise with the curriculum and how to actively gauge whether they're a little bit lost, totally lost, or if they can understand a concept. So we've tried those cohorts, and it's been an ongoing challenge in the fall semester.
Okay, we're just about up with time. I don't know if you guys have 5 more minutes. I have a couple of quick questions I'd love to get in, if that works for everybody on the panel.
Sure.
So can you speak to the technology upgrades, if any, to be able to teach in person and interact with the distance learners, or will distance learning just view the class and not participate if we go to these models with students in class and at home learning? Will there be technology upgrades?
Yep. So I think, it's like we discussed earlier, it might depend on the content, the class. If it's a dance class and I have 8 learners in front of me, I might teach them first, tell them to practice, and then I'm engaged with the students that are at home. I think I understand that correctly. Whether or not there's upgrades in technology needed, everything on campus is wired to have as many learners as it is safe. And so I don't think we would lose anything in terms of technology with students coming on campus or deciding to stay home. It might look a little different on what instruction looks like, depending on if you're there or if you're at home. But hopefully, obviously, the lesson and the content would be the same for your students' classes.
I don't think we're looking. I know some private schools and stuff have invested in like cameras that like follow you around and stuff like that. And I don't think we'd be investing in that. The only thing I think we discussed was microphones because of masking. But I don't think it wouldn't be like how some of the private schools have these like smart special robot cameras.
Yeah, like a 360.
Yeah.
Nor do I think they're going to be all that effective.
No.
I mean, me presenting a PowerPoint here on Zoom versus you watching me write on a whiteboard behind me.
Also, the next question, does the committee have a recommendation? How can we support and get the word out to other parents?
Well, there's going to be the board and the district will ultimately decide on which of these instructional models is best. And I think once that's decided, I don't think the board and the district are going to ask for input from parents in terms of which model do you think best fits your child, because there's going to be thousands of different opinions. I think they're going to choose the one that comes from these committees, and then based on that, parents and guardians can decide what is best for their child based on their comfort level.
I think in our teacher committee, it was split. We only had like 45 minutes to an hour to look at all 5 models and try to come up with, try to rank them as much as possible. We chose not to, specifically because we didn't want it to be, we didn't think it was enough time. But from that short period of time, it was definitely down to the 3, AB, AB+, and AB streaming. And it was split depending on which breakout room you were part of, where some of the teachers were like absolute no to AB streaming. And I think partly it's because they're picturing doing 2 separate things. One thing with their students in person and then one thing with their students at home. And then the other half was pretty much no to AB+. So it was split in that regard. Yeah. So no official recommendations yet.
I think and while we were doing, we were like, we don't even know if parents want this. So, like we're not gonna like, it's gonna be like, I think there's a few parents who are very vocal who really want to go back. And we don't know if that's representative. If it is representative of the school community, like, great, we'll figure it out, but we just really want to know, like, do you want to send your kid back under the constraints of COVID teaching? And like, if so, how? And so just get as many people, especially group people who don't normally fill out these surveys, to fill out the surveys. And so I feel like we're really just trying to use the survey as a way to actually get, a sense of what our to actually represent what our parent community actually wants, because we don't actually know.
Oh, and maybe even ask the students. I already know some students who've said, I'm not going back. Can I do 100% distance learning? They don't want to take the risk. They don't necessarily trust their classmates to stay masked and stay 6 feet apart.
Yeah. And then it would also help us like focus. Sorry. focus our attention, like on the former question, how do we improve what we have, right? So
I can kind of speak from being on the parent committee. And what we talked about was pretty much everything. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, Ms. Edelman, what I was getting from the parent committee is that the parents want the kids to go back because they want them to socialize, yet they don't want a model that's academically inferior, and they don't want their children's teachers to change. So what I was getting is like kind of people want it to be like it was before COVID, and that just isn't going to happen. So I think it's great that we have this where you can explain exactly what the scenarios are, and then parents can just kind of have a more educated view of like what would happen in each of these different plans to their child's education and their health and well-being. So thank you.
Thank you. And then I just want to say that somebody submitted this statement. You all deserve awards and raises for all the work you are doing to figure this all out. Thank you. And then I'm going to do one question and then close the evening. How are students' grades in general affected during this fall? Have you seen a trend already?
Yeah, well, the reason I'm smiling is it's not because of the question, it's just because we spent a good amount of time talking about some pretty specific grade data from we just finished our 12-week mark. And so the admin team and with Gina and some other teachers started looking at some recent grades, and they're down. They're down significantly. And I'm not going to go into, because we could talk about this for hours about what we can do. And it came up at the board meeting too. I think Mr. Friedman brought up how many D's and F's there are across the whole district. So it's not just San Mateo, but we looked at it by content level. We looked at it by A day, B day, 9th, 10th, 11th. We looked at pretty much everything. And we are coming up with a plan that's specific to San Mateo to address some of these concerns. So the grade data is down. But on the flip side, I must say that there's a lot of students doing very well, a lot. And when I can speak to the administrator group is when we pop into classrooms, our teachers are doing amazing things with our students, amazing things. Yes, not all of them have their cameras on, but they're showing up, right? And so trying to stay positive through such a challenging time. Our teachers had very little time to prepare for this. Our students had very little time to prepare. How am I an effective distance learner? And then you have all the external factors about things going on at home, and connectivity issues, and some of our kiddos having to work to either pay rent or put food on the table, because there's just less income coming into the household. So I think everybody's trying to do the best they can. But as grades are kind of on the decline, one, we're aware of it, and two, we are trying to come up with a plan that's going to serve our most at-risk students, and come up with a plan that allows them to get the support they need from someone who is well-trained, who knows how to help, because we've identified those needs now that we're 12 weeks into the distance learning.
and if you can keep your eye out for this plan, you can give us the support that we need to get the okay from the district to run with it. Hopefully.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I'm sure what if all goes as planned, in less than a month, we'll have kind of the plans ironed out. There may or may not be changes to the spring semester, but we're trying to iron out those details, and we'll be as timely as we can with communication to not only our staff and students, but obviously parents and guardians as well.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. Thank you to our panelists, Mr. Gelb, Ms. Sendelman, Ms. Swang, and Mrs. Reed for participating tonight. I received an email from Laura Chalkley. I had reached out to her to possibly attend this evening. So if you have questions for the district regarding the survey, you can email her directly and she'll be happy to answer those questions, as well as I think our panelists tonight are more than happy to also field questions that you may have. But I wanted to read to you what Ms. Chalkley said regarding the survey. She says, I've suggested that parents respond from the frame of mind of how much they would value or feel comfortable with the different scenarios outlined in the survey. If the scenario feels like something your family would value or would be important to you in your decision to send your student to school, you would rate it more highly. If not, you would rate it lower. I would suggest that families consider each statement independently and bear in mind that this survey is not binding. This survey is an opportunity for the district to learn if families would like to send their students to school knowing what they know now and assuming health conditions do not worsen. And we want to learn more about what factors are important to families in helping them in making this decision. We want as many parents to take the survey as possible, and we want to know what they are thinking at this moment. When we are in a position to offer different options and educational models to families, we will share more information and survey them again. So I hope this evening was helpful. I know I gained a lot of information. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And we will post the video on our website. So look for that if you want to follow up and rewatch anything. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Ann. Bye, Lisa. Bye, Gino. Bye,
Bye.
Cece.
Thank you, everyone. You guys are the best.
You're the best.